history fans, and welcome back. Today we're reading book 2 of The Odyssey. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're new, and let's just get straight into it. So, I think it was actually a few months ago we read book 1, so sorry about that, lost track of time. So book 2, Telemachus sets sail. When young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, the true son of Odysseus sprang from bed and dressed. Over his shoulder he slung his well-honed sword, fastened rawhide sandals under his smooth feet, and stepped from his bedroom, handsome as a god. At once he ordered heralds to cry out, loud and clear, and summon the flowing-haired Archaeans to full assembly. I'm saying Archaeans, but it's spelled Antians, but I'm pretty certain I'm right. Their cries rang out. The people filed in quickly. When they'd grouped, crowding the meeting grounds, Telemachus strode in too, a bronze spear in his grip, and not alone. 2 sleek hounds went trotting at his heels, and Athena lavished a marvellous splendour on the prince, so the people all gazed in wonder as he came forward, the elders making way as he took his father's seat. The first to speak was an old lord, Aegyptius, spelt Egyptius, with an A at the front, stooped with age, who knew the world by heart. For one dear son had sailed with King Odysseus, bound in the hollow ships to the stallion land of Troy, the spearman Antinous, but the brutal Cyclops killed him. Trapped in his vaulted cave, the last man the monster ate. 3 other sons he had, one who mixed with other suitors, Eurynomus, and 2 kept working their father's farms. Still he never forgot the soldier, desolate in his grief. In tears for the son he lost, he rose and said among them, "Hear me, men of Ithaca, hear what I have to say. Not once have we held assembly, met in session, since King Odysseus sailed away in the hollow ships. Who has summoned us now? One of the young men? One of the old-timers? What crisis spurs him on? Some news he's heard of an army on the march. Word he's caught first-hand so he can warn us now, or some other public matter he'll disclose and argue. He's a brave man, I'd say. God be with him too. May Zeus speed him on to a happy end, whatever his heart desires." Winning words with a lucky ring, Odysseus his son rejoiced. The boy could sit no longer, fired up to speak. He took his stand among the gathered men. The herald Pisner, skilled in customs ways, put the staff in his hand, and then the prince, addressing old Aegyptius first, led off with, "Sir, that man is not far off. You'll soon see for yourself. I was the one who called us together. Something wounds me deeply. Not news I have heard of an army on the march, word I have caught first hand so I can warn you now, or some other public matter I'll disclose and argue. No, the crisis is my own. Trouble has struck my house, a double blow. First I have lost my noble father, who ruled among you years ago, each of you here, and kindly as a father to his children. But now this, a worse disaster that soon will grind my house down, ruin it all, and all my worldly goods in the bargain. Suitors plague my mother, against her will, sons of the very men who are your finest here. They'd sooner die than approach her father's house, so Icarius himself might see to his daughter's bridal. Hand her to whom he likes, whoever meets his fancy. Not they. They infest our palace day and night. They butcher our cattle, our sheep, our fat goats, feasting themselves sick, swallowing our glowing wine, as if there's no tomorrow. All of it squandered. Now we have no man like Odysseus in command to drive this curse from the house. We ourselves, we are hardly the ones to fight them off. All we'd do is parade our wretched weakness. A boy inept at battle. Oh, I'd swing to attack if I had the power in me. By God, it is intolerable what they do. Disgrace, my house a shambles. You should be ashamed of yourselves, mortified in the face of neighbours living round about. Fear the gods' wrath, before they wheel in outrage and make these crimes recoil on your heads. I beg you by Olympian Zeus, by Themis too, who sets assemblies free and calls us into session. Stop, my friends. Leave me alone to pine away in anguish, unless, of course, you think my noble father Odysseus did the Achaean army damage, deliberate harm, and to pay me back you'd do me harm. deliberately setting these parasites against me. Better for me if you were devouring all my treasure, all my cattle, if you were the ones we'd make amends in no time. We'd approach you for reparations round the town, demanding our goods till you'd returned the lot. But now, look, you load my heart with grief. There's nothing I can do. Filled with anger, down on the ground he dashed the speaker's sceptre, bursting into tears. Pity seized the assembly. All just sat there, silent. No one had the heart to reply with harshness. Only Antinous, who found it in himself to say, "So high and mighty, Telemachus, such unbridled rage. Well now, fling your accusations at us. Think to pin the blame on us. You think again. It's not the suitors here who deserve the blame. It's your own dear mother, the matchless queen of cunning. Look here, for 3 years now, getting on to 4, she's played it fast and loose with all our hearts, building each man's hopes, dangling promises, dropping hints to each, but all the while with something else in mind. This was her latest masterpiece of guile. She set up a great loom in the royal halls, and she began to weave, and the weaving fine spun. The yarn's endless, and she would lead us on, young men, my suitors. Now that King Odysseus is no more, go slowly, keen as you are to marry me, unless I can finish off this web. So my weaving won't all fray and come to nothing. This is a shroud for old Lord Laertes." I feel like I say that differently every time. "For that day when the deadly fate that lays us out at last will take him down. I dread the shame my countrywoman would heap upon me. Yes, if a man of such wealth should lie in state without a shroud for cover." Her very words, and despite our pride and passion, we believed her. So by day she'd weave at her great and growing web. By night, the light of torches set beside her, she would unravel all she'd done. 3 whole years she deceived us blind, seduced us with this scheme. Then, when the wheeling seasons brought the 4th year on, one of her women in the queen's secret told the truth, and we caught her in the act, unweaving her gorgeous web. So she finished it off against her will. We forced her. Now, Telemachus, here is how the suitors answer you. You burn it in your mind, you and all our people. Send your mother back. Direct her to marry whomever her father picks, whoever pleases her, so long as she persists in tormenting us, quick to exploit the gifts Athena gave her, a skilled hand for elegant work, a fine mind, and subtle wiles too. We've never heard the like, not even in old stories sung of all Achaea's queens who graced the years gone by. Mycenae crowned with garlands, Tyro and Alcmena, not one could equal Penelope for intrigue, but in this case she intrigued beyond all limits. So, we will devour your worldly goods and wealth, as long as she holds out, holds to that course the gods have charted deep inside her heart. Great renown she wins for herself, no doubt, great loss for you in treasure. Will not go back to our old estates or leave for other parts, not till she weds the Argive man she fancies. But with calm good sense Telemachus replied, "Antinous, how can I drive my mother from our house against her will, the one who bore me, reared me too? My father is worlds away, dead or alive, who knows? Imagine the high price I'd have to pay Icarius if all on my own I send my mother home. Oh, what I would suffer from her father, and some dark god would hurt me even more when my mother, leaving her own house behind, calls down her withering furies on my head, and our people's cries of shame would hound my heels. I will never issue that ultimatum to my mother. And you, if you have any shame in your own hearts, you will leave my palace. See to your feasting elsewhere, devour your own possessions, house to house by turns. But if you decide the fare is better, richer here, destroying one man's goods and going scot-free, all right then, carve away. But I'll cry out to the everlasting gods in hopes that Zeus will pay you back with a vengeance, all of ye destroyed in my house, while I go scot-free myself." And to seal his prayer, far-seeing Zeus sent down a sign. He launched 2 eagles soaring high from a mountain's ridge, and down they glided, borne on the wind's draught a moment. Wing to wing tip, pinions straining taut, till just above the assembly's throbbing hum they whirled. Suddenly, wings thrashing, wild onslaughts of wings and banking down on the crowd's heads, a glaring fatal sign. talons slashing each other, tearing cheeks and throats. They swooped away on the right through homes and city. All were dumbstruck, watching the eagles trail from sight, people brooding deeply what might come to pass, until the old warrior Halitherses, master's son, broke the silence for them. The one who outperformed all men of his time at reading bird signs, sounding out the omens, rose and spoke, distraught for each man there. Hear me, men of Ithaca, hear what I have to say. Though my revelations strike the suitors first of all, a great disaster is rolling like a breaker towards their heads. Clearly Odysseus won't be far from loved ones any longer. Now, right now, he's somewhere near, I tell you. Breeding bloody death for all these suitors here. Pains aplenty too for the rest of us who live in Ithaca's sunlit air. Long before that, we must put our heads together, find some way to stop these men, or let them stop themselves. Better for them that way by far. I myself am no stranger to prophecy. I can see it now. Odysseus, all is working out for him, I say, just as I said it would that day the Argives sailed for Troy, and the mastermind of battle boarded with them. I said then, after many blows, and all his shipmates lost, after 20 years had wheeled by, he would come home, unrecognised by all, and now, look, it comes to pass. Stop, old man. Eurymachus, Penelope's son, rose to take him on. Go home and babble your omens to your children. Save them from some catastrophe coming soon. I'm a better hand than you at reading portents. Flocks of birds go fluttering under the sun's rays. Not all are fraught with meaning. Odysseus, he's dead now, far from home. Would to God that you'd died with him too. We'd have escaped your droning prophecies then, and the way you've loosed the dogs of this boy's anger. Your eyes peeled for a house gift he might pass to you, he might give to you. Here's my prophecy, bound to come to pass. If you old codger, wise as the ages, talk him round, incite the boy to riot, he'll be the first to suffer, let me tell you. And you, old man, we'll clap some fine on you, you'll weep to pay, a fine to crush your spirit. Telemachus, here in front of you all, here's my advice for him. Let him urge his mother back to her father's house. Her kin will arrange the wedding, provide the gifts, the array that goes with a daughter dearly loved. Not till then, I'd say, will the island princes quit their taxing courtship. Who's there to fear, I ask you? Surely not Telemachus, with all his tiresome threats. Nor do we balk, old man, at the prophecies you mouth. They'll come to grief, they'll make us hate you more. The prince's wealth will be devoured as always, mercilessly, no reparations ever. Not while the queen drags out our hopes to wed her, waiting day after day, all of us striving hard to win one matchless beauty, never courting others, bevies of brides who'd suit each noble here. Telemachus answered, firm in his resolve. Eurymachus, the rest of you fine brazen suitors, I have done with appeals to you about these matters. I'll say no more. The gods know how things stand, and so do all the Achaeans. And now all I ask is a good swift ship and crew of 20 men to speed me through my passage out and back. I'm sailing off to Sparta, sandy Pylos too, for news of my long-lost father's journey home. Someone may tell me something, or I may catch a rumour straight from Zeus, rumour that carries news to men like nothing else. Now, if I hear my father's alive and heading home, hard-pressed as I am, I'll brave out one more year. If I hear he's dead, no longer among the living, then back I'll come to the native land I love, raise his grave mound, build his honours high, and with the full funeral rites that he deserves, and give my mother to another husband. A declaration, and the prince sat down, as Mentor took the floor. Odysseus his friend in arms, to whom the king, sailing off to Troy, committed his household, ordering one and all to obey the old man, and he would keep things steadfast and secure. With deep concern for the realm, he rose and warned, Hear me, men of Ithaca, hear what I have to say. Never let any sceptred king be kind and gentle now, not with all his heart, or set his mind on justice, no. Let him be cruel and always practise outrage. Think, not one of the people whom he ruled remembers Odysseus now, that godlike man, and kindly as a father to his children. I don't grudge these arrogant suitors for a moment, weaving their wicked work with all their wicked hearts. They lay their lives on the line when it comes to consume Odysseus's worldly goods, blind in their violence, telling themselves that he'll come home no more. But all the rest of you, how you rouse my fury. Sitting here in silence, never a word put forth to curb these suitors, paltry few as they are, and you so many. Mentor! Euena's son, Leocritus, rounded on him, shouting, "Rabble-rousing fool, now what's this talk?" Goading them on to try and hold us back. It's uphill work, I warn you, fighting a force like ours, just for a meal. Even if Odysseus of Ithaca did arrive in person, to find us well-bred suitors feasting in his halls, and the man were hell-bent on rooting us from the palace, little joy would his wife derive from his return, for all her yearning. Here on the spot he'd meet a humiliating end if he fought against such odds. You're talking nonsense, idiocy. No more. Come, dissolve the assembly. Each man return to his holdings. Mentor and Halitherses can speed our young prince on, his father's doddering friend since time began. He'll sit tight a good long while, I trust, scrabbling for news right here in Ithaca. He'll never make that trip. This broke up the assembly, keen to leave. The people scattered quickly, each to his own house, while the suitors strolled back to King Odysseus's palace. Telemachus, walking the beach now, far from the others, washed his hands in the foaming surf and prayed to Pallas. Dear God, hear me. Yesterday you came to my house. You told me to ship out on the misty sea and learn if father, gone so long, is ever coming home. Look how my countrymen, the suitors most of all, the pernicious bullies, foil each move I make. Athena came to his prayer from close at hand, for all the world with Mentor's build and voice, and she urged him on with winging words. Telemachus, you'll lack neither courage nor sense from this day on, not if your father's spirits course through your veins. Now there was a man, I'd say, in words and action both. So how can your journey end in shipwreck or defeat? Only if you were not his stock, Penelope's too, then I'd fear your hopes might come to grief. Few sons are the equals of their fathers, most fall short, all too few surpass them. But you, brave and adept from this day on, Odysseus's cunning was hardly given out in you. There's every hope that you will reach your goals. Put them out of your mind, these suitors' schemes and plots. They're madmen, not a shred of sense or decency in the crowd. Nor can they glimpse the death and black doom hovering just at their heads to crush them all in one short day. But you, the journey that stirs you now is not far off, not with the likes of me, your father's friend and yours, to rig you a swift ship and be your shipmate too. Now home you go, and mix with the suitors there, but get your rations ready. Pack them all in vessels, the wine in jars, and barley meal, the marrows of men's bones, in durable skins, while I make rounds in town and quickly enlist your crew of volunteers. Lots of ships in sea-girt Ithaca, old and new. I'll look them over, choose the best in sight, will fit her out and launch her into the sea at once. And so Athena, daughter of Zeus, assured him. No lingering now. He heard the goddess's voice, but back he went to his house with aching heart, and there at the palace found the brazen suitors skinning goats in the courtyard, singeing pigs for roasting. Antinous, smiling warmly, sauntered up to the prince, grasped his hand and coaxed him, savouring his name. Telemachus, my high and mighty, fierce young friend, no more nursing those violent words and actions now. Come, eat and drink with us, just like the old days. Whatever you want our people will provide. A ship and a picked crew to speed you to holy Pylos, out for the news about your noble father. But self-possessed Telemachus drew the line. Antinous, now how could I dine with you in peace and take my pleasure, you ruffians carousing here? Isn't it quite enough that you, my mother's suitors, have ravaged it all? My very best, these many years, while I was still a boy. But now that I'm full grown and can hear the truth from others, absorb it too. Now, yes, that the anger seethes inside me. I'll stop at nothing to hurl destruction at your heads, whether I go to Pylos or sit tight here at home. But the trip I speak of will not end in failure. Go I will, as a passenger, nothing more, since I don't seem to command my own crew. That, I'm sure, is the way that suits you best. With this he nonchalantly drew his hand from Antinous' hand, while the suitors, busy feasting in the halls, mocked and taunted him, flinging insults now. God help us, one young buck kept shouting. He wants to slaughter us all. He's off to sandy Pylos to hire cutthroats, even Sparta perhaps, so hot to have our heads. Why, he'd rove as far as the fiery as dark rich soil, and run back home with lethal poison, slip it into the bowl, and wipe us out with drink. Who knows, another young blade up and ventured. Off in that hollow ship of his he just might drown. Far from his friends, a drifter like his father. What a bore! He'd double our work for us, splitting up his goods, parcelling out his house to his mother and the man who weds the queen. So they scoffed. But Telemachus headed down to his father's storeroom, broad and vaulted, piled high with gold and bronze, chests packed with clothing, vats of redolent oil. And there, standing in close ranks against the wall, were jars of seasoned, mellow wine, holding the drink unmixed inside them, fit for a god, waiting for the day Odysseus, worn by hardship, might come home again. Doors, snugly fitted, doubly hung, were bolted shut, and a housekeeper was in charge by night and day, her care, her vigilance, guarding all those treasures. Euryclea, the daughter of Ops, Pison's son. Telemachus called her into the storeroom. Come, nurse, draw me off some wine in smaller travelling jars, mellow, the finest vintage you've been keeping, next to what you reserve for your unlucky king, in case Odysseus might drop in from the blue and cheat the deadly spirits. Make it home. Fill me an even dozen, seal them tightly. Pour me barley in well-stitched leather bags, 20 measures of meal, your stone ground best. But no one else must know. These rations now, put them all together. I'll pick them up myself toward evening, just about the time that Mother climbs to her room and thinks of turning in. I'm sailing off to Sparta, sandy Pylos too, for news of my dear father's journey home. Perhaps I'll catch some rumour. A wail of grief, and his fond old nurse burst out in protest, sobbing. Why, dear child? What craziness got into your head? Why bent on rambling over the face of the earth? A darling only son, your father's worlds away, God's own Odysseus, dead in some strange land. And these brutes here, just wait. The moment you're gone, they'll be scheming against you. Kill you by guile, they will, and carve your birthright up in pieces. No, sit tight here, guard your own things here. Don't go roving over the barren salt sea. No need to suffer so. Courage, old woman, thoughtful Telemachus tried to reassure her. There's a God who made this plan. But swear you won't say anything to my mother. Not till 10 or a dozen days have passed, or she misses me herself and learns I'm gone. She mustn't mar her lovely face with tears. The old one swore a solemn oath to the gods, and vowing she would never breathe a word, quickly drew off wine in 2 weird jars, and poured barley in well-stitched leather bags. Telemachus turned to the hall and joined the suitors. Then bright-eyed Pallas thought of one more step. Disguised as the prince, the goddess roamed through the town, pausing beside each likely crewman, giving orders. Gather beside our ship at nightfall. Be there. She asked Noman, Phronius' generous son, to lend her a swift ship. He gladly volunteered. The sun sank, and the roads of the world grew dark. Now the goddess hauled the swift ship down to the water, stowed in her all the tackle well-rigged vessels carry, moored her well away at the harbour's very mouth, and once the crew had gathered, rallying around, she heartened every man. Then bright-eyed Pallas thought of one last thing. Back she went to King Odysseus's halls, and there she showered sweet oblivion over the suitors, dazzling them as they drank, knocking cups from hands. No more loitering now, their eyes weighed down with sleep. They rose and groped through the town to find their beds. But, calling the prince outside his timbered halls, taking the build and voice of Mentor once again, flashing-eyed Athene urged him on. Telemachus, your comrades at arms are ready at the oars, waiting for your command to launch. So come on with our voyage now, we're wasting time. And Pallas Athene sped away in the lead, as he followed in her footsteps, man and goddess. Once they reached the ship at the water's edge, they found their long-haired shipmates on the beach. The prince, inspired, gave his first commands. Come, friends, get the rations on board. They're piled in the palace now. My mother knows nothing of this, no servants either. Only one has heard our plan. He led them back, and the men fell in, and fetched down all the stores, and stowed them briskly deep in the well-ribbed holds, as Odysseus's son directed. Telemachus climbed aboard. Athena led the way, assuming the pilot's seat reserved astern, and he sat close beside her. Cables cast off, the crew swung to the oarlocks. Bright-eyed Athena sent them a stiff following wind rippling out of the west, ruffling over the wine-dark sea, as Telemachus shouted out commands to all his shipmates. All lay hands to tackle. They sprang to orders, hoisting the pinewood mast. They stepped it firm in its block amidships, lashed it fast with stays, and with braided rawhide halyards hauled the white sail high. Suddenly wind hit full, and the canvas bellied out, and the dark blue wave, foaming up at the bow, sang out loud and strong as the ship made way, skimming the white caps, cutting toward her goal. All running gear secure in the swift black craft, they set up bowls and brimmed them high with wine, and poured libations out to the everlasting gods who never die. To Athena first of all, the daughter of Zeus, with flashing sea-grey eyes, and the ship went plunging all night long, and through the dawn.